What's up, YouTube? This is Graylan Stewart here with another video. Today I'm going to talk to you about how I protect my deals and what that exactly means. So obviously I'm a virtual wholesaler. That's what I do. And actually I have a virtual wholesaling company. I'm not necessarily a wholesaler myself, but I do run a team to where we take down deals, wholesale deals, and sell them to end buyers on a daily basis. So the reason I bring up how we protect our deals, because when I was learning, about wholesaling, this wasn't something that was really talked about much. So I thought, since I'm doing some videos here and there, I want to talk about it because it's important as a new wholesaler. If you're out there trying to get deals from motivated sellers, it's definitely important to know what to do with those deals once you have them, and to make sure that those deals are protected so that you can end up getting paid on those and nobody goes around you to get those from you. So let's get into it. So basically, just to recap, once you get a deal with a motivated seller, you got the contract and it's ready to go. You turn that contract into your title company. Now you got to make sure that deal's protected before you start marketing this property to buyers, right? Because buyers, obviously, they're the ones that kind of help finish this off for you, because they're the ones that's actually going to take the deal down and help you complete the transaction with the seller like you promised that you would do, right? But however, there are buyers out there that will completely go around you and try to steal the deal, because really they want to be direct to seller like you, the wholesaler, have it. But that's why the most important step in all of this is getting the deal, because once you have the deal, you completely control it. But it's up to you to know what to do to make sure that you have that control, right, and that protection. So once you have the contract with the buyer, you send that to the title company. Even if you don't send it right away, the point is you have the contract, right? So that gives you equitable rights to that property with the seller. However, if you start marketing that property right away, you're blasting out the address all over social media or to your buyers list or whatever. Some buyers are shady, especially if they don't know who you are and they feel like maybe they can pull a fast one over you. There's buyers out there, trust me, in every single market that will completely try to just go around you and go direct to the seller. Because they might go, for example, if you blast that out, or you just make public, information known that you have a deal at a certain address, you might have a buyer that actually goes out there and reaches out to that seller. Who knows? Maybe they were even working with the seller before, but they found out that you actually got the deal because you're talking about it and you're giving people the address. So that buyer could actually go around you. They could go to the seller and say, "Hey, seller, I'm interested in buying your house. I know that you have a deal with this company over here, and I know they're only paying you $45,000 for this. Hey, if you just do the deal with me, cancel it with them, I'll give you $47,000 for this deal. So you'll get to pocket $2,000 more dollars, right?" So the seller, they're like, "Oh yeah, I definitely want that. $2,000 more dollars. That's a lot of money, especially to distressed homeowners, right?" So a lot of times they'll jump on that deal because they want more money, right? So really, there's a form that you can actually fill out, and it's called different things in different part of the country, but it's virtually the same thing. There's a memorandum that you can have filled out and filed with your county, and there's also an affidavit of equitable interest, right? And like I said, they're both pretty much the same thing. Really what that is that's a form saying that my company basically has equitable interest in a certain property, and that property is, up to me to perform on. But during that time period, I have rights to that property, basically is what it does. And once you file that with the title company, or not the title, but once you file that with the actual county that the property is in, that now clouds the title. So that's what really happens. It clouds the title to where, whether it's a memorandum or an affidavit of equitable interest, right? it's the same thing. So each one of those clouds the title. So really what that means is now your seller and your buyer, either one, can't do the deal without you, right? Because you have the title clouded. So let's just say that buyer did go around you and they talked to your seller, and your seller is like, yes, I want 2,000 more, right? So the seller is reaching out to you suddenly, and they're talking about, hey, I want to cancel this contract because I just changed my mind, or we decided to stay here, whatever the reason is, right? The buyer's probably gonna coach them through it on what to say, most likely, because they're being shady and sly, and they're telling them, hey, here's exactly how you do it, right? So I know this from experience, but because it definitely has happened to me, it's almost happened to me a couple of times. So if you don't have the right protection, then yeah, you lose money, right? So you're expecting to make 5, 10, 15, 20 grand on a deal, and your buyer go around you, and then suddenly you're out of the deal, right? So anyways, so you file this memorandum or the affidavit, and most title companies will file it for you, or just go down to the title or to the local county office and just file it yourself. So either way, if you have a good relationship with your title company, most likely they'll probably file it for you. But if you don't, you're just starting out, it's no big deal to file it at the county. It usually costs $13, $15 depending on where you live. So it's super cheap, super easy to do. We do it on every single property, no matter what, 100% of the properties. Even on properties that we're not super confident in, that we think we might have locked it up too high, or potentially won't have a buyer because it's in a smaller town or something like that. The point is, we do it every time because it's cheap, right? It's worth to pay $13 to $15 on a property that you're making 10 or 15 grand on all day, every day, right? Anybody would do that. So really is, I'm talking about this because when I was starting out, I was like, okay, I need a purchase contract with the seller, and then I need an assignment contract with the buyer. But nobody talked about anything else really. But no, really the most important piece, in my opinion, is the actual affidavit of equitable interest, or the memorandum of contract, whatever you want to call it. That's the most important piece, because that piece actually clouds the title to where the seller cannot sell that house without you. They literally can't sell that house without you. And another buyer that gets the contract later, or that cancels on you and they get it later, they cannot buy that house without you either. Same with the wholesaler. They can't wholesale that house without you, because the end buyer can't close because the title is clouded. Okay. So a quick story. This actually happened to me within my first few months of wholesaling. I started in September of 2018, and this was like probably November. So it was my first, dozen or so deals, probably, maybe a few more than that. But it was definitely one of my first few months in business. And basically, I got a contract with a seller. The woman owned this property by herself. I got a contract with her on a Friday for $60,000. So the ARV on this house was roughly 115, okay? And it needed probably 10 to 15, depending on your scope of work that you needed in repairs, right? So I got the property for 60 grand on a Friday. Come Sunday, the seller actually calls me and says, hey, I need to, cancel my contract with you. I changed my mind, blah, blah, blah. She went, on this whole story. I don't even remember everything she said, but the bottom line was she was canceling the contract. And it sounded just a little bit strange to me, because it really didn't add up. So I finally got to the bottom of it. I'm like, so why exactly are you canceling? Because it doesn't make sense to me what you're telling me. So she finally told me, well, my husband actually did a contract with another buyer, and he's actually given us $70,000. I'm like, what do you mean your husband? You told me you weren't married. You're a single woman, and the property's only in your name. She's like, yeah, but we're kind of like common law married, is what she said. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. Well, you never mentioned him before. So when did you get this? When did he sign the contract with the this other buyer? She's like, yeah, he signed it on Saturday. I'm like, okay. So you're telling me that your husband, actually your boyfriend, signed this contract on Saturday with this other buyer, and you and I signed our contract on Friday. Is that correct? She said, yes. I was like, okay, well, you can't cancel the contract with me. We are obligated to close on your property, and we will do so. And I understand that you want more money and all those things, but fact of the matter is, you signed up with us, agreed to sell your property, and you have to uphold that contract. So basically, long story short, she was like, okay, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I feel bad, blah, blah, blah. I said, plus legally, your other buyer doesn't even really have a valid contract because it's not even with you, the homeowner. It's with your boyfriend, right? She's like, yeah, you're right. She's like, yeah, but I really need to get more out of this. He's willing to pay us more. I'm like, okay, I understand that. I was like, what if I just match his price at 70? We'll just do, an addendum to our original contract. Our original contract date is still the same on Friday, and our affidavit was still filed on Friday. But we'll do an addendum, just saying, well, okay, fine, we'll do 70, just to keep the deal, right? Because she could have, she can't technically sell. I can't force her to sell. But at the same time, she could never sell without me because I wasn't going to release that. And sometimes when you get to know people and sometimes things happen by accident, you can maybe work something out to where you split the deal or something. But this was totally shady on the buyer's part, and he completely tried to go around me and actually didn't even have a valid contract. So long story short, I did do the addendum for 70 grand. I wasn't going to make as much because I was thinking I'm probably going to be able to sell this for like 75 to 80 tops, right? So 5 to 10 grand. It would have been 15 to 20 grand profit at my original 60, right? So long story short, I did get but okay, first of all, here's the problem. So now there's 2 affidavits of equitable interest on the property because the other buyer filed it as well. And also in the meantime, I already figured out that, there's no buyers out there that were willing to even pay, the 75 or whatever it was, like the lowest I would have went. Because the lowest for me, I was like, I'm not going to make less than 5 grand on this. It's a good deal because it needed minimal repairs. So, but there just wasn't a cash buyer that wanted to pay that much. So I already decided that I was going to take it down myself. I already saw success and had a lot of cash, so I was just going to buy it. And that was my plan, to close on it. So went through the title process. Title company informed me that, hey, this other buyer has an affidavit on this as well. What do you want me to do? So I was like, great. So I had to finally figure out who the buyer was, talk to them, specifically, and of course they wanted me to pay them a little bit. I'm like, I'm not paying you anything. If you had a valid contract and you actually beat me to it, then 100% I would pay you for it, split it with you, whatever. But in this case, I'm not giving you anything. Your contract's not even valid, first of all. Secondly, you were the day after me. Look at the date of the affidavit. I gave him a copy, right? So anyway, so he finally agreed to release it without, payment. So I got a release of affidavit signed by this other buyer, sent that to the title company. Everything was good to close. So now at this point, I'm closing on it myself. And I already know I had this deal at 60, right? And now I'm paying 70, and I'm using my own cash for this property too. So technically it's not a wholesale deal at this point. It's like, it's going to be a flip basically, right? Or a rental or whatever my exit strategy is. So my goal was just, a lipstick flip, paint and carpet's all I needed and put on the MLS, right? So, but however, I wasn't comfortable really paying 70 of my own money. I was kind of good where I was at, but, and there were a couple of other minor issues that kind of came up that I didn't realize. But really, the buyer tried to screw me and the seller tried to screw me because they wanted more money, which is understandable. But, at this point, now we're like a week and a half from closing, and I'm just telling the seller at this point, I'm like, hey, we had this deal at 60 originally. That's where I was pretty comfortable, but, we really need to get this lower. I was even thinking maybe closer to 50 because there's other issues, that came up that we didn't know about and you didn't tell us about. Because keep in mind, we do this virtually. So really, when we put eyes on a property, that's just to confirm what the seller told us initially, right? So once we got actual eyes on the property, we found out there's a couple other little things, that were going to need to be addressed. And, and I was already thinking 60 beforehand. Now at this point, I need it lower. So I was obviously pitching 50 because I knew I could come higher than that. Anyway, she finally agreed to 58. And because at this point we negotiated for a few days. And I'm like, hey, I'm ready to close on this anytime now because title work was done. She agreed to 58 finally. We did close on it. And we actually didn't even do the carpet and paint like we planned. We cleaned it really well, tore down this huge tree stump that was in the front yard. and then did a couple little things. I mean, we probably spent $600 or $700 on just doing the very minor things that needed to be done, and then we put on the MLS. So I think we ended up selling that property for like $87,000, if I remember right, and we ended up getting it for $58,000. So with closing and everything, we're probably in it for $61,000 after the little tiny cleanup that we did. So it was a decent profit. It wasn't huge still. Sold it for actually I think I sold that for mid-80s now that I think about it, because I did two flips at the same time. The other one sold for 76. This one sold in the mid-80s, I believe, because I'm pretty sure we made around 20 grand on that property when it was all said and done. And that's just another lesson in itself, that we actually made more taking it down, because we would have made maybe 5 if we were lucky on this deal, but we ended up making 20 because we sold it to an end MLS buyer, and that was okay with fixing it a little bit, and it was still good enough to get a loan on. It wasn't like there's holes in the roof or anything. But long story short, the memorandum or the affidavit of equitable interest is 100% what saved me on the deal, and it went from me potentially making $0 on this to still pulling out a $20,000 profit on the property. And it was all because of that affidavit of equitable interest that we filed. Cost us $13 to save our 20 grand profit is really what it amounted to. So that's just a lesson in itself. Not only do you need your contract with the seller and your assignment contract with the buyer, but you need the most important contract in the middle, right? The affidavit of equitable interest or a memorandum of contract. It's exactly the same thing. Different people use different things in different parts of the country, but it's the same thing. You can use one or the other anywhere you're at. So hope that serves you well. Hope you understand it and it makes sense to you. If you like this channel and you're liking the content that I'm putting out, definitely subscribe to help me out with the algorithms and everything that YouTube likes to see for us to kind of gain traction. We're definitely looking to grow the channel more, so please like, subscribe, share, all those things, and hopefully we'll see you again in a future video here to come. House Dealer, talk to you soon. Bye-bye.